Let's go through the lesson on solving and graphing inequalities. Okay? So first let's look at the definition of an inequality. The inequality is different than an equation because in an equation, which has an equal sign, both sides of the equation are equal. You should remember that the first thing I had you do was draw a line to show you that there are two sides in an equation, and those two sides are always equal in an equation. Okay? In an inequality, it means one side is greater than or less than the other side. And then there's also a symbol for, we know that it could be greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to, if it has the line underneath it. Okay? So, to graph an inequality, you draw a number line, put arrows on each end to show that the line extends both directions infinitely, because numbers go on for infinity. Whoa. So you draw arrows on the lines, and then you mark where the number is. So if you're given an inequality like S is less than or equal to, oh sorry, let's do this one because that one is graph. N is less than 5. Then what you should do is mark where the number is on the line. Okay, so I should have said you should mark 0 when you draw the line. Mark 0. Okay? And then mark where the number would be in relation to 0. So 5, positive 5, is 5 spaces to the right of 0. So you could draw a little tick mark on the line and mark 5. Okay? Now, one of the things that you have to do when you are marking the number is use the correct type of dot. There's two types of dots that you'll use. One is called an open dot, and the other one is a closed dot. You use an open dot when the symbol is either less than or greater than. It's without the line underneath it. Okay? So that's what it says right here, very small, but it says, for greater than or less than, use an open dot. Okay? If it's just the arrow, or if it's just the point, the little V symbol sideways, just a little caret, sometimes called, except that caret is up and down. So if it's just that, without the line underneath, if it's just one piece, then it's an open dot. And what it means is that the answer is not going to include the number. Okay? That's why it's open. It doesn't include the number. So, we know that n, the answer, is less than 5. It's somewhere along here. Somewhere to the left of 5. Okay? So, what we want to do is shade that way, or draw a line right above the number line, and shade that way, and put an arrow to show that the answer could be anywhere to the left of 5. Okay? Now, we know that the answer doesn't include the number 5 because we used an open dot. Open dot means it doesn't include 5. N is less than 5. Be careful because you've already got a warning. Alright? So don't interrupt me. N is less than 5. Now, if we replaced n with a number, like, let's say that we put 5 right here. Is this a true statement? 5 is less than 5?
No.
No? That's why we know that this 5 should be marked with an open dot. Okay? Now, how do you know which way to shade? Well, if you mark the number first, and the statement is written so that the variable is written first. So when you look at this inequality statement, it says n is less than 5. N comes before 5 in the statement. The variable comes before the number in the statement. So what we can do in that case is whatever way this is pointing, whatever way the symbol is pointing, you shade that way on the number line. So it's pointing to the left, we shade to the left of the number. Okay? Because this statement is telling us where n is. N is less than 5. Okay? Look at the second example. N is greater than negative 3. So you would mark negative 3 with an open dot because the symbol is just the greater than sign. And then it says n is greater than negative 3. So we shade everything to the right of negative 3, or you draw your line from the number, draw the line to the right of negative 3. Jacob.
So you said that n is greater than negative 3, but what if n is just negative 2? How come the line is so long?
Because we don't know if it's negative 2. It could be negative 2, but it could be anything
But then it just
to
skips
be...
right over it.
What?
It just skips it. Just skips over negative 2.
No, it doesn't. Negative 2 is to the right of negative 3. Negative 1 is to the right of negative 3. And so we're looking for a number that could be anywhere on this line.
Okay.
Okay? Now, what if it was written like this? What if that was written negative 3 is less than n? Does that mean the same thing? Danny, you say yes, why?
Because it's just switched around, it still says the same thing, but just switched around.
Would you graph it the same way?
Yeah.
Yeah, the graph would be the same, okay? The whole thing is just flipped over. Now, it's harder to graph this kind because notice that the variable is second in the statement. It doesn't say n is greater than negative 3. It says negative 3 is less than n. But we need to graph what n is. And so that's why you can't shade the same direction as the arrow is pointing when the number is written in first in the statement. Okay, so you could either turn this around and write it this way, n is greater than negative 3, and then graph it so that you point the arrow the same way. Or you just have to rethink your whole process and say, well, if negative 3 is less than n, that means that n is greater than negative 3. And then graph it to the right. Okay? Let's look at these. X is less than or equal to 40. So now what kind of dot should we use, Aiden? No, this has the line underneath. So that means we have to use a solid dot. Okay? A solid dot. X is less than or equal to positive 40. So we should mark 40 on the line with a solid dot, and then shade and draw an arrow on the end of it to the left of 40. Okay? Seriously. I know, but you guys are real close to getting cues today, okay? Next time you're going to. I'm not going to give you another warning. Okay. V is greater than or equal to negative 25. So mark the number with a solid dot. And then, since we know that V is greater than or equal to negative 25, draw the arrow to the right of 25, and make sure you put an arrow on that shading line. This is called shading, but it's really just drawing that line to show where the solutions are. Okay? Jacob.
Could you actually shade it and then put little lines at the end of it?
No. No, draw a line above it. Okay? Look at your worksheet. So one of the things I have to do is write some inequalities. We did this last year, and I think we did this at the beginning of the year also. We're talking about expressions. The total t is less than 16. Okay? So they tell us what variable to use. The variable t is less than, it doesn't say is less than or equal to, so we just use the less than sign. And then the number 16. So write that one down. Look at number 3. The price P is less than or equal to $25. So we know we're writing in this inequality, this math sentence for a real world situation where you know that the price was less than $25. You can't remember exactly what it was, or you're not sure what it will be, but you know that it will be less than $25. So P is less than or equal to $25. That's how an inequality is applied in the real world. That's what how you write those, or what they refer to. A number n is negative. Do they give us a number here? No. But we know where the negative numbers start, right? So
We could put n is less than 0.
correct. Very good, Jacob. N is less than 0. Is it equal to 0?
No.
No, 0 is not negative. So n is less than 0. Number 5. We have to remember what type of symbol to use with a solid dot. And the variable is not assigned, so we're just going to use n for our variable. Now what? How do you read this graph? Otto?
Less than or equal to
It's less than or equal to
7. Negative 7.
negative 7. Very good. Yep. Everybody see that? Number 6. Again, we'll use n. Danny?
N is greater than 11, negative 11.
Greater than negative 11. Yep. How else could we write this? Bella? Yes, negative 11 is less than n. Okay? Usually, it's easiest to graph it when the variable is first, because then it tells you what direction to shade. But this is another way of writing it. Negative 11 is less than n. Okay? Let's skip down to number 9, and then I'm going to let you work on your own a little bit. Number 9, now we have to graph it ourselves. So you're given the inequality x is less than negative 2. What should you do first? We've already got a line there. Otto?
You
2.
Yep, so put an open circle on -2, just like that. Draw an open circle on the line around the -2 tick mark.
Open circle is just like a line around it, but if it was like a solid circle or dollar term, you'd like fill it in.
Right, so if we were marking -1 on number 10, you should fill in the dot, or fill in the tick mark with a solid dot. Let's go back to number 9. Which way should we shade? It says x is less than -2. Point the direction we should shade.
Eat.
Which direction should we shade? Point the direction we should shade. Do you know? Good. Melina, which way should we shade?
That way?
Yeah, which way is that way?
Left.
Good. To the left. Now, what I want you to do is put your line of shading above the line. Don't put it on the line because it's too hard to see. Okay? So put it above the line. And then draw an arrow on the end. Because the line doesn't stop. It keeps going infinitely to the left. Okay? And then I want you to practice writing inequalities at the bottom. Any questions on this? Devil. Okay.
So are we just doing this entire work?